What if the most dangerous sentence in China wasn't shouted in protest, wasn't leaked in a memo, wasn't written in a manifesto? What if it was whispered by a man who was supposed to translate and chose to deliver a message instead? This is the story of Lin Wei, a translator so invisible most leaders forgot his name until he said one sentence that stopped the room cold. A sentence no one expected. A sentence not in any script. A sentence that wasn't meant for the audience. Hours later, he was gone. No trail. No records. Not even a digital footprint. But what if that sentence wasn't a mistake? What if it was a signal? Planned, rehearsed, and recorded long before he ever stepped into the room? This isn't just a disappearance. It's a message. One that may not have been his to speak, but one he was chosen to deliver. Because in the halls of power, where every word is controlled, sometimes the silence around one voice screams the loudest. The sentence that stopped everything. It was supposed to be routine. A high-level economic summit in Shanghai, closed door, no cameras, just notes, translators, and people who already knew what the outcome would be. Nothing controversial. Nothing emotional. At least, that was the plan. Xi Jinping sat at the long lacquered table, fingers interlocked. Across from him, an EU trade official read a prepared statement. Behind them, aides whispered, fingers danced over laptops, and security agents listened with bored discipline. At Xi's left stood his chief translator, Lin Wei, 38 years old. No scandals. No debts. No visible ideology. He had served for nearly a decade, often described by diplomats as a ghost with a clipboard, always present, never seen. Until that day. At 11:07 a.m., the EU official read a line that caused a pause. The original English phrasing was harmless enough. We acknowledge all prior understandings, including verbal assurances. Lin Wei leaned forward. His mouth opened. And then, he froze. Not for a second. Not for 5. But for 13 full seconds. Aide cams later confirmed it. She turned his head slightly, not a glare, not a warning. Just a glance. And Lin spoke. But what he said wasn't a translation. It was something entirely different. He promised something once. He thinks we forgot. But we didn't. The room fell into silence. Xi's face didn't move. But one of the internal security officers shifted, hand to his earpiece. The EU official blinked. "I'm sorry," he said. Lin Wei stood still. Then, without another word, he set down his headset and walked out. No one stopped him. Not the guards. Not the aides. Not even Xi. As if his exit was pre-authorized by someone who knew it would happen. He left behind no notes. No pass card. No personal effects. That night, his apartment was sealed. His digital footprint erased. And when a BBC journalist tried to inquire about his status, they received a reply from the ministry. No record of such an employee exists. But everyone at the summit saw him. And everyone heard what he said. A sentence not meant for them, but for Xi himself. The dictionary that didn't belong to him. 2 days after Lin Wei vanished, a cleaning staff member at the state guest house filed an anonymous report. It wasn't sent through official channels. It was physically mailed to a news outlet in Hong Kong. Inside the envelope was a short note. He left this in room 237. I don't want it. But someone should know. Alongside the note, a worn leather-bound dictionary. Not just any dictionary. It was a 1991 Mandarin English reference, outdated and annotated. But inside the back cover, something strange was taped in place. A single flash drive, labeled Echo_LW. The journalist who received it never published the findings. 2 days later, their publication issued a statement saying the report did not meet verification standards. By the end of the week, that journalist had resigned. But others weren't so cautious. A Japanese intelligence analyst, posting under a pseudonym, claimed the flash drive contained more than simple files. It held recordings, 8 of them, all voice memos, all dated weeks before the summit, all spoken in Lin Wei's voice. But here's the disturbing part. He wasn't translating. He was practicing how to say just one phrase, over and over. He promised something once. He thinks we forgot. But we didn't. Each memo was slightly different. A tonal shift, a changed cadence, a pause before forgot. Why would someone rehearse a mistake? Unless it wasn't one. Unless it was the plan all along. Tucked into the dictionary were also 3 torn pages. Handwritten marginalia circled a phrase repeatedly. A promise that should not be remembered. Scholars noted this isn't standard phrasing. The grammar is slightly off. More poetic. More personal. Like someone mimicking the way she speaks. And one linguist pointed out, the stroke style resembled Xi's own handwriting from his early career. That's when the question changed. It wasn't just, why did Lin Wei say that? It became, whose words were they really? And deeper still, was Lin Wei translating someone from Xi's past? The voice he didn't recognize as his own. 3 weeks after Lin Wei vanished, Xi Jinping's personal security team received a high-priority audio flag. It wasn't intercepted chatter or a diplomatic wiretap. It was a single unmarked USB drive, found on the doorstep of the central archival room. Slipped under the door, in a black envelope, sealed with wax. On it, one audio file. File name, mirror_ling_rev1.wave. The file was immediately quarantined. Scanned for malware. Encrypted. Then decrypted again, manually, by a party cyberforensics team. What they heard sent a chill through the chamber. The voice was Xi's. His cadence. His rhythm. Even his subtle throat clearing between thoughts. But the content. I remember promising them peace. But peace was a performance. They wanted a father. I gave them a mirror. Those in the room turned pale. She hadn't recorded this. He hadn't said this. And yet, VoicePrint analysis confirmed a 97.4% match. Only one explanation seemed plausible. The voice had been synthesized. But not by a foreign actor. The watermark embedded in the file's waveform was from a proprietary encoder. Used exclusively by the Zhongnanhai Internal Audio Lab. She reportedly listened to the full clip 3 times. Then stood up. And asked a single question. Is this my memory, or someone else's rehearsal? That same night, a technician from the Central Propaganda Bureau was arrested. No trial. No charges. His family received a message 6 days later. He was reassigned. Permanently. But here's the twist. 3 months before his arrest, this same technician had published a short story in an obscure university journal. Title, The Man Who Mistook His Voice for His Reflection. Its plot. A translator who begins speaking in a leader's voice. And can no longer stop. By the end of the week, she ordered a full audit of voice records across state media dating back 10 years. He reportedly banned the use of internal synthesis labs for all confidential briefings. And most notably, he refused to speak at the next Politburo session. Instead, he submitted a written statement. Typed. Stamped. Delivered by hand. Because even he was no longer sure that his own voice was still his. The bag he never took back. At 6:42 p.m. on the evening after the summit, a man entered the Longtan Lake metro station in Beijing. He wore a simple gray overcoat. No badge. No briefcase. Only a dark canvas shoulder bag with a red zipper pull. The surveillance footage shows him entering, walking calmly to locker 113B, and placing the bag inside. He then exits the station, never looking back. The footage was time-stamped. And the man, identified by 2 separate sources as Lin Wei. But here's the mystery. The footage wasn't accessed by authorities. It was leaked, via an anonymous post on an encrypted messaging board reserved for ex-Intel analysts. Accompanying the footage was a note. The bag has been collected, but its contents were not meant for storage. They were meant for release. What was inside that bag? A declassified internal report, leaked a month later, detailed the following. A handwritten diary, entries dated between 2014 to 2019, describing closed-door sessions with Xi in disturbingly personal language. A list of names, many of which had already disappeared from public view. A folded photo showing a young Xi Jinping at a boarding school, with a classmate circled in red. No official biography mentions this classmate. And strangest of all, a mirror shard, wrapped in silk, engraved with 5 Mandarin characters. To rule with another's voice. The handwriting in the diary, confirmed by forensics to be Xi's own. Except Xi denies ever writing it. He claims the entries are fabricated, digital penmanship forgery, his office called it. But forensic linguists disagreed. They cited subtle patterns, sentence structures, comma placement, phrasing unique to Xi's early essays. One expert described it as the most intimate forgery ever created, if it's a forgery at all. More disturbing. The circled classmate in the photo? He was found living under a new identity in Macau. He gave one interview before vanishing. In that interview, he said this. He wasn't always Xi. There was a time he wanted to be someone else. I think that's who finally spoke. She never claimed the bag, never acknowledged it existed. But a week later, Locker 113B was sealed shut, replaced by a steel panel, gone from the public map, as if it had never existed. The memory that wasn't his to forget. The National Archives building in Beijing is a fortress of whispers. 8 floors above ground, 3 more below. Only a handful of people know what's in sublevel 3. That's where the listening room is. A soundproof chamber lined with analog playback machines, reel-to-reels, and a dozen audio terminals that don't connect to any network. Not even internal party ones. In that room, Xi Jinping sat alone for 43 minutes on a Tuesday morning. Not a meeting. Not a ceremony. Just him and a single reel of tape labeled Echo_LW Final Cut. The contents of that reel remain classified. But one technician, since exiled, claims it wasn't just a voice. It was a conversation. Xi, talking to himself. Except one of the voices wasn't his. And when he responded, it wasn't in policy language. It wasn't leadership jargon. It was a child's tone. Quiet. Ashamed. He said, I didn't forget you. You were erased before I learned how to remember. The text says she left the room without saying a word. But the recording wasn't destroyed. It was copied once. And that copy, it disappeared. 2 weeks later, someone posted a new audio clip on a hidden server in Kazakhstan. Just ambient sound. But in the background, faintly, Xi's voice again. Not as a leader, but as a young man, singing a lullaby once popular during the Cultural Revolution. The kind of song children sing when they don't want to sleep alone. Digital forensics tried to trace the IP. It bounced through 8 nodes. Final ping. Zongnanhai internal loopback. So who was Lin Wei? A translator? A mirror? A memory? Or maybe, just maybe, he was the last person allowed to remember something she wanted the world to forget. But memories, once spoken, can't be unsaid. Especially when they don't belong to you. Sometimes the most powerful sentence isn't the one that starts a war, but the one no one's allowed to repeat. Thank you for joining us on this haunting journey. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Hidden Xi. Because the silence around power is never empty.